and welcome back to Faith for Dummies. Hi Rob, hi everyone else.
Hi everyone, hi Izzy, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm all right. It's been a busy few weeks, but I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. My baby's sleep has gone back downhill after saying it got better, so back to being tired again. But yeah, otherwise not bad, thank you.
Sad times.
And also, I believe today, as in the day of the release, is your birthday.
It is 18th of November. I am
Even
older now.
even though we're not recording it on your birthday. I won't sing for your benefit, but
For the benefit of everyone listening, thank you.
Charmed. Good.
Thanks very much. Well, today's episode, as you will have seen in the title, Rob interviewed one of his friends, Cam, to talk about how to prioritise church and sports and what that can look like when sports are on a Sunday morning. And it was a really, really interesting episode. I think Cam says some really, really helpful stuff.
Good, yeah, I'm glad you think so. I really enjoyed it. It was nice to catch up, but also I thought he said some really good stuff. It was our longest interview that we've done. We did have to cut out a few questions, which I'm really sad about, but I think we decided we'll put one of them in a reel on Instagram so you can see that extra bit. But yeah, and one point, his housemate started talking to him and he had to go, Tom, I'm in the middle of a podcast. It was very funny.
Oh, real life. See, you guys don't know how much we edit out of these podcasts. But yeah, the stuff that Cam had to say was so interesting. And he also shared a very funny dummy moment that made me laugh. So we're not going to do one of our own this week. We're going to let his dummy moment shine.
Yeah.
So shall we go to Rob and Cam?
Let's go to it. Brilliant. Thanks, Izzy. I'm joined here with my friend. Please, will you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hiya, I'm Cameron. I'm one of Rob's friends.
Yeah, you are. So how do we know each other?
We know each other because when I was younger and I used to go to a church called Biggleswade Baptist Church, where I'm sure the long-term listeners will know is the church where Rob is the youth minister at. Rob started his youth ministry there when I was probably 13 years old-ish.
Maybe a bit older. Not that it matters, but
early teen years.
Yeah, and you were great. So, and you've been gone a long time now, haven't you? It feels a bit different to when you were there.
Yeah, I've been gone. I've been out of Biggleswade for 4.5 years, which some would say is impossible to live away from Biggleswade for that long.
And so one thing we do on this podcast is we share a moment where we have done something perhaps a bit silly, a dummy moment. So, Cam, have you got a dummy moment that you can share with us, please?
Oh gosh, there were lots of options for this one, Rob. I would describe myself. I think Izzy described herself as being quite clumsy in one of the things I listened to, and I would say that I quite often match that. So my story, I work as a physiotherapist, and recently I was on a bit of like an evening out with some colleagues. And as part of this evening out, I found myself on the dance floor, and because I guess when you're out with your colleagues, it's quite a formal thing. You're trying to like impress and be nice and social. So naturally, I brought out like the funky chicken dance, as you do. And this girl that I hadn't really ever met before, it's like our first time knowing each other, I elbowed her in the face. Like, God, it was really not good. She was fine, but I was like absolutely mortified that this girl I'd never met before, that I was going to bump into at work every now and again, will know me as the man who elbowed her in the face on a random dance floor in Nottingham.
Wow. When you were telling me that story, that's not where I was expecting you to go with it.
No, that's not where I was expecting my evening to go at the time either. So we're both caught off guard, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, did you carry on, manage to enjoy your evening?
I did. I also later on knocked someone else's drink over. So I guess the clumsiness streak continued, but that felt less significant. But no, me and the girl that I elbowed in the head had a really good evening.
Good.
It didn't ruin it altogether. It was just a few moments of embarrassment, shame, and apologies.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for sharing. Yeah, that's
no worries.
So this episode is all about choosing between church specifically on a Sunday morning, but not limited to that, or an activity. Now, in your case, that was football. So perhaps you can start off by telling us the first time you remember there being a choice between football or church on a Sunday morning.
Yes, I can even start a little bit before that.
You go for it.
I'd say that, football has always been a massive part of my life, a massive time commitment from I was a typical, I guess, British boy in many ways, that as soon as I can remember, I was chasing after a little football. At the age of 6, I'm pretty sure 6, I joined my first organised club where we would play on Saturday mornings and we would train one night a week. And that was Saturdays. I think it was probably about 3 years after that, when I was about 9 or 10. The team I was with, like all the friends I made in this team, my cousin used to play from at the time. That team, we started playing games on Sunday mornings instead. And up until that point, I'd always gone to church on a Sunday morning with my whole family. My parents are very involved in church and they definitely wanted me there.
So what was that like for you, but also what was it like for your parents?
Yeah, so for me, it was tricky. The initial plan we had was I'd go to church one week and football the other week and would swap it. I personally, at that age, believe it or not, I was far more keen to be playing football than going to church. And I used to just find it like quite frustrating that you'd kind of go to a game and maybe I wouldn't start. I'd be on the bench because everyone that was there last week was starting and they like know everyone a bit better. Or maybe if I'm hanging out with my teammates and they're telling fun stories of something that happened a few weeks ago and I can't share in that. So there's a little bit of frustration on my end that I had to miss so many games to go to church. But also at the same time, by no means did I not enjoy church. Like, I loved being at church as a kid. I've got so many fond memories of that. And like, it wasn't like I was being dragged there. It's just that if I had the choice, I probably would have been at football. In terms of how my parents found it, I think they probably found it a lot harder than I did, to be honest. I think that they probably knew that if they told me as a young kid that I couldn't go to football this week, I had to go to church, they knew that could give me like a very negative viewpoint on church and ultimately on God and on faith. I'm pretty sure some of their like friends, I think, thought it wasn't that wise to have me missing Sundays. So that was tricky for them. And also, like, my dad loves going to church, absolutely adores it. He does loads with the church and like lots of his friends are there. That's one of the highlights of his week. But once every 2 weeks, he had to drive me to go and stand in a cold, wet field watching me play at a pretty embarrassingly poor level of football. So yeah, like he had to make a commitment as well. So I'd say probably it was tricky for me and I was frustrated, but also really tricky and a difficult decision to make for my parents.
Yeah. That happened, what was going on for you for a long time from when you said about 9, but up until I knew you. So did it change as you got older?
Yes. So by the time I was probably like 15, 16, I was playing football, not playing church. I was playing football every single week. And then I'd go to church either in the evenings, if there's had an evening service on. And I was always really committed to like the midweek things we had at church as well, which is where I knew Rob from. But we had like Wednesday and Thursday things on at church. It's not the same as a Sunday morning. There were like youth groups and Bible study groups. But because I loved football, so I wanted to be there on a Sunday, but I did also love church and loved my friendships I had there. So if there were things on during the week, I wanted to be there and I wanted to commit to that. So yeah, as it went on, I guess I was at Sunday mornings a lot less, but I was starting to find other ways of still being part of church and part of a church family outside of that.
Great. So did church on a Sunday affect your view of football? And to flip it as well, did football on a Sunday affect your view of church?
So did church affect my view of football? I would say not massively. I think, especially as a young person, I would now say that football was an idol in my life, that I cared so much about it, far more than was healthy. And when I thought about commitments I was making, football was like pretty much always the priority. It brings me so much joy. Like I've got what I'd now describe as like a God-given passion for sport and for activity, and particularly for football. So church didn't massively impact that because, like I've just said, the majority of my time as a teenager, I was playing football every single week. Those first few years might have been a bit tricky when I was doing 1 week on, 1 week off and alternating it. Yeah. But by the time I was playing football every week, I guess church didn't affect my viewpoint on it too much. Sure. And then to flip the question back, did football affect my view of church? I would say, yeah, it did quite a lot, because I guess I just didn't want to be there because I knew there were other things on, particularly on a Sunday morning. So what football never did when I was younger, it never affected my view of God. That I always loved God. I always wanted to have a relationship with him. I didn't know how to do that well. And part of that was what I look back as like poor decisions around football and around church and getting that wrong quite a lot. But I had a lot more fun playing football than I did at church. ultimately we shouldn't make every decision based on what's more fun. That would not be sustainable. That would not be a good idea. But I definitely held some resentment towards going to church because football was always better option in my eyes.
Yeah. How did you balance that then?
How did I balance it? I'd say not well. The way I balanced it when I was sort of 9 to 18, I balanced it by committing as much as I could into football, sending everything in it, as much time as I possibly could get away with into football. And then with the rest of my week that was free, I would commit whatever time I had left to church because I enjoyed church and I wanted to do that. That was something I was passionate about. Then when I got to university, it kind of changed that I actually still ended up playing not football, but futsal, which is five-a-side indoor football. So from 19 to 21, I committed more to futsal than I did to church, purely from a time commitment. But the difference was at that point, I was doing it because I wanted to be there for my teammates and I wanted to introduce them to God and I wanted to love God through my sport. And I believe that God's given me a gift for sport, a gift for activity and a passion for it. And I believe that everyone who's listening to this has something that God has created within them, a passion for some kind of activity, some kind of event, things that they should not ignore, but should try and work out how to love football and love God, how to love crafts and love God. Hopefully you get the gist. But yeah, when I was at university, the difference in my commitment was I was still doing sport, but I was doing it as my way of worshipping God. And that's a tricky thing to get right and quite a hard thing to explain, I think. But that's where it was different to when I was a teenager. As a teenager, I was doing what I wanted to do and being selfish in that and just doing it for my own pleasure. And at university, through the futsal team, I was able to serve God through my sport and love God through my sport. And that's not to say I didn't enjoy it. I'd say in many ways it was a far more joyful, life-giving experience than football ever was for me as a teenager. But I felt a calling from God to go and do it at university. And then since then, just the final quick bit, when I left university and I left that futsal team, I still play football now, but the time commitment is far smaller because I now feel that God's calling me to bigger commitments in my church that I go to. So I want to spend more time there to be obedient to God, which is in some ways tricky because it's less football and I love football. But if it's what I think God's telling me to do, then it's not tricky at all.
Yeah. Do you have any stories of then sharing your faith through your actions, through your words in football where something has gone well?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
There was a time when one of my friends, a guy called Joe, he came along to this event because it was a church event. It was with the Christian Union in Nottingham, something that I'd organised and planned alongside futsal that year. It was a big time commitment for me. And he came along to this with me and he sat next to me as a man told him that Jesus Christ loves him and died on a cross for him and wants to know him. And off the back of that, we had a 40 minute conversation about the meaning of life and where we find joy and where we find happiness. And he was really open and receptive to hearing the gospel of Jesus Christ and really receptive to everything I had to say. And the reason why he was there on that random Tuesday and came on to this event is nothing to do with the event that was being run. It was because me and him had a deep enough friendship where if I could ask him to come along to something, he'd say yes. And we'd formed a deep enough friendship to have big conversations about, is there a God? Who is God? Where do we find happiness? What's the point of life? All these really tricky conversations to have that I would not have had with him had I not committed so much time into the sports team. And also if I'd not acted in a way that was loving while being in that sport team. And then also there have been times that my managers from my club when I was a child, so we're talking 6 until 18, I had the same coaches. There have been a couple of times that they've come along to events at church because, again, there's been such a deep relationship that's built within those time commitments.
Wow.
And in both of those environments, I was the only Christian there. God works in many amazing, wonderful ways. God worked through that team and worked through those people's lives using me in some ways.
That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. I want to take you back to something that you're probably very familiar with called Breakfast Club. Can you just briefly tell us a bit about what is Breakfast Club and why was it set up?
Yes. So Breakfast Club is a club on a Saturday morning once a month that my parents and a couple other like family parents set up. The intention of it was to like get people into church on a Saturday morning. And what it'd be a lot of games. We'd have breakfast first and we'd play some games. We'd read a passage from the Bible and like have some questions and almost like a mini sermon led by someone in the morning. And ultimately, like the purpose of that is, one, it's always good to be spending time with friends and spending time in like a community of people thinking and talking about Jesus is a really positive thing to have. But also because I think my parents recognized that not everyone has the opportunity to make it to church on a Sunday morning. So yeah, I think it's really cool that my parents set that up, because it just gave a lot of people an opportunity to be at church and to hear about who Jesus is and to be like discipled too, without having to be available every Sunday morning, because that's just not everyone's experience.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really a testament to your parents and the people that set that up for the purpose of it, but also its legacy in a way, and how you being busy on a Sunday morning has led to them being, right, we recognize this is important for you, but church is important to us and to you. How can we get that?
So make this work. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. It's really cool.
Absolutely.
So now all this has happened and you've left home and everything. What's your relationship? I know you've answered a bit of this already, but what's your relationship with football like, and what's your relationship with your parents like?
Sure. So I'll start with football. So my relationship with football now is much more positive than it used to be. Yeah. So I spoke earlier about football being an idol, which is to say that football took up too much of my time, particularly too much of my mind, and even more importantly, too much of like my heart. And what I cared most about was football, even more so than my relationship with God and my relationship with Jesus. What I'd say now is that's not true at all, that I still love football and I'm as passionate about football as I used to be. I've not lost that, but I'm so much more in love with God, And that's my like priority now over football. And then what I'd say is like the people you spend time with and the things that you commit yourself to will ultimately shape the person you become, and they will shape your heart as well. So when I was younger, the majority of the commitments I had, even outside of like formal events, like when I was on my own in my own time, I was spending a lot of time like watching football videos, talking to my friends about football, not spending a lot of time talking to Jesus or reading my Bible, which is like so pivotal in getting to know him. Whereas now, where I want to spend time with God even more than I want to spend time on the football pitch, it's still a part of my life, but it's a more appropriate part of my life. And in terms of my relation with my parents, I love both my parents so much, love them to bits. And I think like particularly looking into what we spoke about today, I'm so grateful that my parents like let me keep on playing football, because I think that was like I don't want to, football and sport, it's not that big a deal in the grand scheme of life. It's not that big a deal. It's a hobby at the end of the day, as much as I'm talking about it like it's a hobby. So it'd be quite easy for them to have decided he doesn't need to do this. He doesn't need to keep going with this. But like the degree that I ended up choosing, the friends I've got now, the memories from my childhood, the things that I spend my time doing now and enjoy, so many of them are around like sport or football or just like general activity. And that's in part because my parents allowed me to make commitments to that when I was younger. And so I'm really grateful they did that. Yeah.
What would you say to listeners who don't have a breakfast club on a Saturday, who don't have youth clubs midweek?
Yeah, that's really tricky. What I would say is that Sunday mornings, in my opinion, now that I'm a little bit older and potentially a little bit wiser, is the most important thing you can do. Midweek clubs are great. Things like breakfast club are great, but God made us for community. And walking with him, walking with God is not easy. There's so many challenges to it. I've had so many weeks when I've not wanted to pick up the Bible and I've not wanted to talk to God for so many reasons. And having church on a Sunday is like essential to rooting yourself back into faith, back into like God, really. So I'd say that if that is like your only option, I'd say majority of the time that's your best choice. If you're kind of like battling between different things and different commitments, I'd probably say church is the better option. Hopefully that's not an experience that many people have. Like, I'd hope that either you've got the option to do whatever your passion or activity is on a different day of the week to just a Sunday morning, or hopefully you've got the opportunity to still have like church connection and fellowship and family outside of just the church morning. But I think if genuinely your only option for church fellowship is a Sunday morning, that's like an essential part of living for Jesus.
Great. What importance does church have for you now then?
Yeah, church is super important for me now. I would say I'm someone that has had probably quite a volatile relationship with God, actually, that I've had. And I think this is something that a lot of people listening will actually relate to, that you've had massive highs and massive lows in your walk with Jesus. And that's like an okay thing to have. But for me, like, church is the absolute rooting of my faith, that no matter what's happened Monday through to Saturday, I know that on Sunday morning, this is a commitment that I do every single week. And it's a place where I'm encouraged and strengthened by the people around me. Yeah, the Bible tells us that we're not made for relationship as individuals with God. We're made for community to know God. So that's what church is for me. It's like this place where I can strengthen my relationship with Jesus, spend time with other believers, and just be like encouraged by one another.
Great. A bit of a one that I've not written to you about. Sorry about that.
No, all good.
Most people that go on to play football aren't going to end up being professional.
Yeah.
So these questions that we're asking, our opinions on church, does it change at all, do you think, when we're talking about someone that's really, really good and hoping to become a professional footballer one day?
Such a good question.
Because I'm not very sporty, but I like sport. I really like football. And I know the effort and the training and the schedule and the rhythm lifestyle that you have to put yourself through mentally and physically in your body. And if we're talking pro, like games on a Sunday, games on a Saturday, traveling.
So what I would say is the fundamentals of what I want people to get out of what they're hearing from me, and what I believe most strongly, is that in whatever you do, whatever time commitments, your heart should be for God. And places that you recognize in your weekly rhythm that aren't for God should be cut out. So if you want to be professional, or if you want to be leading an orchestra and the top violinist across the whole country, the amount of time and the amount of commitment you have to make is absolutely astronomical. And undoubtedly that will mean that at some point you have to sacrifice a Sunday morning. But what I'd say is, if you're doing these commitments out of like selfish ambition and desire for yourself and pursuing what you want, and you're not including God in that, that's a negative thing. But if you can find a way to be going to trials and playing at a top level of football and playing a musical instrument alongside your friends, and you're doing that in a way that is honoring God and worshiping him, despite the fact that you're not in a church congregation at the time, it's an incredible thing, and you should cherish it, and you should cherish the gifts and passions that God's been giving you. And with all that said, alongside that, recognize that even Jesus went to the temple to go and pray and to spend time with believers. So if Jesus did it, we have to do it too. It's an inherently good thing.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you so much for that. I think something else that can be helpful is church is obviously the people. It's not the building. You can have church on a Wednesday evening, every Wednesday evening, if that's what your thing was. If you can get that community there, then we can do that. Obviously, it's still important on a Sunday morning, but God wants to use you in your field that you're doing, as you were saying. Great.
Amen.
Is there anything else that you would like to say that you think would help our listeners?
So I won't add anything new for this question, but what I will say is I'll just like reiterate a couple points. And the first one is that the commitments and people that you spend time on directly impact the person you become.
Yeah.
So be looking around at the people around you and the place that you're spending time. Maybe that's time on your phone. Maybe that's time with a group of people that you know are doing things that you shouldn't be. There's not a way you can get around that without it affecting who you are. And that's my firm belief on that. So bringing that back to football quickly, of like, when I spent all my time with football as a young person, and in my heart of hearts, what I truly desired most was not to know Jesus more and to live for him, but was to be better at football and to win more games and to be appreciated by my peers more. So that's kind of like the big point that I want to reiterate.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on and all the wisdom that you shared and everything. It's been so interesting just to like hear everything. It's great for us just to catch up. Thanks so much. I kind of forgot that we were recording and it should be. But
yeah, so was I. That's why I was just talking for so long.
So thanks, Cam. I'm going to hand back to Izzy in the studio.
Woo.
Thank you so much, Cam. We really, really loved hearing about that. Well, I did anyway, and I know Rob loved speaking to you about it. And I think it will be really helpful. I think I just wanted to reiterate what Cam was talking about when he talked about how it's not necessarily about choosing between God and sport or whatever else it might be, but actually questioning whether you're serving God through that sport, even if it is taking the place of church and things like that, or whether you're just choosing it instead of God. There is a really fine line, but I think it's an interesting conversation to be having with maybe an older Christian that you trust about, you know, if I'm doing sport instead of church, am I serving God in what I'm doing, or am I just choosing sport over him?
Yeah, thanks, Cam. That was really good. I really enjoyed doing it. I really liked the fact how when I logged on, he had called himself Cammy G, the one and only, and my name was just Rob. So I thought I need to correct this. So I then changed my name to Roberto, the second one. So he was the one and only, and I was the second one. And we kept them for the whole interview. It's actually still got that as my name now. So we're currently Izzy and Roberto. But yeah, anyway, I really liked how when he was talking about an example of sharing his faith and like living it out in sport, he also mentioned the fact that some of his managers had gone to like a service or something that he said. And I think that that's just a reminder for us that if we've got friends at school, whoever, and seeing us as Christian young people like living it out, we also don't know that the teachers might also be seeing what's going on as well, even though they're not our peers. And I just thought that was a really cool reminder. I actually got an email from a teacher a few years ago saying he was a Christian teacher and he spotted a Christian young person who goes to my youth group wearing a wristband and like living out their faith in that way and talking about all the youth activities they did. And that was a teacher that got me into this school. So yeah, it's just a really cool reminder that it's not only the people that we are deliberately talking to and hanging out with, but other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we hope that this podcast episode, if you are someone who's thinking about sports or another thing that is taking you away from church on a Sunday, that this can be a conversation starter. Maybe you could share this with a parent or carer or youth worker and just chat through these things, because there is not a one size fits all answer. And I think that's what Cam showed us. So thank you so much, Cam, for showing us actually how you can be a devoted follower of Jesus and also be devoted to other things in your life too, but they're not quite the same. And there's a way of figuring that out. So thank you, Cam, very much. And yeah, we will see you guys next week.
Yeah, what are we doing next week? Do we know?
I can't remember. I think it's just you and me.
Yeah, okay.
See you next week, Rob.
See you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.